If there's a topic that really fascinated me toward the end of my school career was gene editing. And it's something that I'm surprised people do not address more often, but I'm also kind of glad that people don't address it more often, because maybe it's something that, because I would imagine there's a degree of legal interventions, a lot of the aspects of it maybe not being accessible to the general public. I guess that is a good thing in this case, or maybe the algorithm doesn't know that that's the kind of content I would be interested in learning about. Basically, gene editing, it's pretty much what it sounds like. You can change DNA on animals, on anything that's living. And I guess that's where genetically modified organisms come from. We see that on our foods and things. But I want to explore this from the perspective of gene editing a person. If I remember right, there was this set of twins. I forget their names. Was it like Nana and Leah? I'm not even gonna guess. Well, I just guessed. I never heard about them again. Maybe I should look into it, but I do believe we do have genetically modified kids who have been born. Personally, when it comes to gene editing, I'm 50-50. I like the idea of being able to diagnose that if I'm expecting a child that's going to have a disease that's going to disable them, and by extension disable me too, because it's a complication I'm going to have to learn to live with and help my child survive through. There's a part of me that would like to guarantee that my child would not have to suffer. There's a part of me that wants for something to be done so that that can be corrected or mitigated on my child so that they can live a full life. Let it be save them from a disease, save them from a deformity. We all know that those things can complicate how you exist in life. And I don't think it's fair that by an accident of birth, you have to suffer the consequences and live with unfair disadvantages. But there's also that part of me that worries about what people would do if they knew that they have the option to gene edit. You guys know how in the past I made a topic about how people simply cannot handle being able to freely customize things. Like, we can get on apps, we can order things exactly how we want it, how much of what, take something out, add something instead, all those things. That's what worries me about gene editing, because if this were something that's commonplace and accessible, can you imagine I'm having a kid and for some reason I decide I want my kid to look a particular way. I'm going to design what my child is going to look like, because for some reason I believe that it's too risky to let nature decide who I mate with and what design comes out of that. So can you imagine, like, I'm dating a brother and then we have a kid, and all of a sudden I'm like, I want my kid to be blonde and blue-eyed, despite both of us having brown eyes. If I wanted to increase the chances of my child having those traits, how about if I mate with someone who has those traits? But I also understand that nature simply has laws and rules. We really should let nature do its thing, even if we cannot make sense of it, even if we don't understand it and it seems detrimental for us. Because if something like blue and green eyes are supposed to be a rare trait because it's a recessive gene, then let it be reseeded out of existence if that's what it's supposed to do. I mean, there are disadvantages to certain traits. For instance, aren't blue-eyed people more prone to having things like cataracts and blindness issues and stuff like that? But just an example. Let's say that for some reason I'm mating with someone of a dark complexion, but all of a sudden I want to design my kid to look pale. No, that's just not gonna work out, because it's not supposed to be how things work out. And really, what I would like is for my kid to be born to be able to adapt to their environment. Let's say that we were still living by the rules of nature, that there wasn't this crazy overdevelopment excessive landscaping, industrialization, blah, blah, blah. I would like for my child, if we are born in the freaking Russian wilderness, I want my kid to be equipped with cold resistance, for example. Now, if we are in a desert area, I would like for my kid to have physical traits to help him adapt to a desert environment. Have longer lashes, have thick eyebrows, have a darker skin, because in deserts there isn't going to be a lot of opportunity for you to find shade, and the sun can cook you to where your skin can develop cancers and shit. So how about if we do that instead? Another thing I would like to see is attitudinal adaptation, but I really wouldn't know how you can begin to design that. I would like for people to not be frustrated easily. I would like for people to not give up easily. I would like for people to be mentally stronger, be more patient, more resilient, all those things. Is that something that gene editing can provide? Is that something that you even inherit? For me, my biggest worry with gene editing being accessible is that I just don't trust people with the decisions they're going to make. On top of that, imagine having that conversation with your child. I would want to tell my child, hey, so just so you know, I chose for you to look like this. Critically thinking, my child might develop a sense of, oh, I'm only acceptable because I look this way. Had my mom not intervened, I wouldn't be acceptable to her. I wouldn't be acceptable to this society. You know, let's say that I designed like 80% of my child. Imagine what that would do to people psychologically. People psychologically already cannot handle a lot of things out here. You're influenced by the people you see online, by what they eat, how they exercise, how they dress, how they spend their money, how they make income. Imagine with gene editing what that impression would be. Imagine your kid having a conversation with another kid, and that other kid telling them that they too had their parents decide how they were going to look. And what would that do to people? Do you not think that, especially in this country, home of the free, do you think that those kids would be proud that their parents intervened with what they were going to look like? Or do you think they would have been prouder to have been born freely, to have been born naturally? Like, okay, this is the way that things panned out for me. This is the way I came out. This is the lottery that I won. No parental intervention. Just superficially, really quickly going over things. I wonder if people would do research on what genes are better to pass on, and maybe we all would start looking pretty similar. But I also believe that since people tend to be very superficial nowadays and easily impressed and really, really fixated on vanity, I think that people would elect for traits that look nice, even if it means that it's not practical. For instance, if I can design my own vehicle, why would I drive this little Corolla through a mountain terrain that's not paved? See what I mean? So imagine if I elect to edit my child to have a specific appearance, but then we live in a hot area, but I decided for my child to have thin eyebrows and all that. So imagine that. Can you just imagine how I set up my child for failure? Or let's say I want my kid to be a gymnast. I'm going to make my kid the tallest kid in the world. I'm going to make him 9 feet tall because hell yeah, height is awesome. But then let's say that for some reason my child's dream is to be a gymnast. I set up my kid for failure because now they have like a physical trait that puts them at a severe disadvantage. See what I mean? I'm just afraid that people would regret their decisions and what that might mentally do to some kids. Some kids might end up being grateful. Oh, dad, mom, thanks for helping me be born with, I don't know, straight hair or something like that, because otherwise I would have been born with ugly curly hair, you know? You just don't know. This could go so many different ways, and all I can see is we are creating problems. And let's face it, is it really bad to eradicate disease? Or is it really bad to not eradicate disease? Because disease has to exist for a reason. It's supposed to wipe out anybody who's not in shape. But now, because of society, civilization, we look at it as every life matters, which I agree. I think life really is worth living. What are the consequences of disrupting nature? If we start editing each other to where we're invincible and we can all live to be 200 years old, and by the time we're 200, that's when we start looking and feeling like we're around 70 or 80, what would that do for the world? Are we going to stop people from reproducing so that realistically we don't overpopulate, things like that? If we go out here and we say we're going to spay and neuter cats and dogs so that they don't overpopulate, who's going to say, oh, let's sterilize humans so that they don't overpopulate? Oh, wait, we have done that before to minorities. We have performed surgeries and administered drugs on certain groups of people so that they are likely to die or be infertile. So, see that? To me, that's hypocritical. And that's part of the reason why I believe that we shouldn't ever, 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 ever give the regular public the power to gene edit. Even if it means saving someone's life, even if it means enhancing your traits for something, just don't disrupt with the flow of nature any more than we already have, because we're going to evolve into something that we don't know what the consequences would be. And you guys know that phrase that I absolutely detest, I didn't know. So since we will never know, how about if we don't try to find out? That's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. There's really nothing serious about this topic, so don't take it too seriously. It's just superficially how I think about it, how I look at it. And you know how I said 50-50? Well, 50% I would like to have a way to guarantee that my child is not going to have to suffer via things like disease and disability because of the hindrance that that represents in life. But I also worry about how that could be used for other things like vanity. So 50% I disagree. You shouldn't intervene with how your child is going to look or come out. But sometimes I think that people are like, well, while I'm at it, if I can change the genes of my kid to save them from disease, let me save them from being ugly. And then your perception of what's attractive differs from mine. Because let me tell you, my mom and I do not have the same taste in men at all. Men that she finds attractive, I'm like, and guys that I find attractive, I don't want to find out. I really don't.